Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going on a journey to explore the fascinating world of India's dairy industry.
The world's largest, I might add.
Oh, that's right. I forgot to mention that. You know, it's easy to overlook just how massive this industry is,
Absolutely.
but you've given me some really great research on this, and it's clear that it's not just about milk production.
Definitely not.
This industry is deeply intertwined with India's history, economy, and society.
It's a fascinating story.
It is, and we're going to be diving deep today into Dr. Tipana B. Kolkar's research paper, Dairy Farming and Rural Development.
Excellent, true.
Published in 2022, he gives us a really comprehensive look at this topic, and I'm excited to unpack it all with you today.
I'm happy to be here.
So, okay, let's start with a little history lesson.
Okay.
I was reading, before India gained independence, big cities like Mumbai had a pretty inefficient system for getting their milk.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Yeah.
You can imagine, buffaloes being transported all the way from, rural areas into these bustling cities.
Yeah.
It wasn't the most efficient
Not at all.
and certainly not the most hygienic system.
Definitely not something you'd want to see.
No.
But then things took a pretty dramatic turn, right? With the cooperative dairy movement, and Dr. Kolkar highlights this pivotal moment in 1945
Yes.
when farmers in Gujarat went on strike.
Right.
They were protesting against the, what they saw as exploitative practices of middlemen.
Yeah, they had no other recourse.
And led by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel.
A very important figure.
This strike was incredibly significant
It was.
because it led to the birth of Amiwell, a name now synonymous with Indian dairy.
You got it.
Amiwell.
Meal, it's everywhere.
It really is. And it's a model for, what became a nationwide revolution.
So fascinating. So how did Amiwell's success spread throughout the country?
Well, in 1970, the National Dairy Development Board, or NDDB, launched what they called Operation Flood.
Okay.
And it was a massive three-phase program
Wow.
aimed at transforming India's dairy landscape using this cooperative model.
Essentially, it connected small-scale dairy farmers directly to consumers in major cities, cutting out the middleman and ensuring fair prices for farmers.
Smart.
And that's really what led to the, what we call it kind of a milk tsunami
I love that, a milk tsunami.
that swept across the nation.
So Operation Flood was clearly a game changer, but how did it impact India's position in the global dairy market?
Well, it catapulted India to its position as the top milk producer.
Of course.
But, more importantly, it really empowered small farmers, particularly women,
Yeah.
providing them with a stable income and greater control over their livelihoods.
Such an important point.
Dr. Kolkar actually mentions a striking statistic in his paper,
Okay, what is it?
that an investment in dairying generates more than double the employment compared to the same investment in crop production.
Wow, that's incredible. So we can really see how dairying isn't just about milk. It's a major engine for economic and social development, especially in rural India. But I'm sure there are challenges too, right? Dr. Kolkar doesn't just paint a rosy picture.
Of course not. No industry is without its challenges, and the Indian dairy sector is no exception.
So what are some of the biggest hurdles they're facing?
Well, the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, had a significant impact, particularly on migrant workers,
Okay.
who play a really crucial role in the dairy supply chain.
Right. Especially in the context of recent events, I can see how disruptions like that would have, ripple effects throughout the industry.
Yeah, it highlighted existing vulnerabilities, but also offered new opportunities.
Okay.
Because dairying has the potential to provide a lifeline for returning migrants who may face limited job prospects in urban areas.
Yeah.
In fact, the government is actively directing funding and initiatives towards dairy development to support this potential.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
But before we dive into those initiatives, I want to go back to the cooperative model.
Okay.
Amul's success story is pretty remarkable, and it seems like cooperatives have played a crucial role in India's dairy journey.
They've been instrumental.
Tell me more about that.
Well, they've connected small farmers to markets
Yeah.
and have provided them with access to resources and technology,
Okay.
which has given them, a collective bargaining power that they wouldn't have individually.
It's like strength in numbers, right? Precisely.
But I'm sensing that there's more to this story.
Oh, there is.
Dr. Kolkar hints that even this successful model might need some adjustments.
You're right. It's not a perfect system.
So what are some of the challenges these cooperatives are facing?
Well, one issue Dr. Kolkar highlights is that while they've excelled at connecting small farmers to markets, they haven't always kept pace with the changing demands of those markets.
So what kind of changes are we talking about? What are consumers looking for that maybe these cooperatives aren't providing?
Well, for one, there's a growing demand for value-added dairy products.
Oh, okay.
Things like yogurt, cheese,
Makes sense.
even ice cream, these higher-end products.
Yeah.
Many cooperatives are still primarily focused on milk production. So they've mastered the basics,
Yeah?
but they need to diversify to stay competitive.
You got it. That's exactly the challenge they're facing.
Okay, so that's where private dairies often have an edge.
Right. They tend to be more agile,
Makes sense.
quicker to adapt to these market trends.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a tension between the social benefits of the cooperative model and the market pressures of a rapidly growing economy.
That's a really good way to put it.
So how can they strike that balance?
Well, Dr. Kolkar argues that for cooperatives to remain competitive, they need to find ways to innovate,
Okay.
diversify their product offerings, and even explore partnerships with private players.
Partnerships with private companies. That's an interesting idea. I wouldn't have immediately thought of that.
It might seem counterintuitive, but it could be a win-win.
How so?
Cooperatives could benefit from the marketing expertise
Okay.
and distribution networks of private companies while still maintaining their focus on supporting small farmers.
That's a really good point, leveraging each other's strengths. But let's not forget that dairying in India is more than just an economic activity.
Right.
It's deeply embedded in culture and religion. And Dr. Kolkar brings up a rather sensitive topic, the perception of cow slaughter.
It's a very complex issue
For sure.
with direct implications for the dairy industry.
Yeah,
In many parts of India, cows are considered sacred,
right.
and their slaughter is either banned or highly restricted.
Which creates a unique dilemma.
It does.
Because milk production is encouraged, but what happens to the cows once they're no longer producing milk becomes a complicated question.
A very complicated question, yeah.
Right. It's not like they can simply be retired to pasture.
No, and this is really where the economic and cultural aspects of dairying clash.
Interesting.
Dr. Kolkar suggests that finding a solution that respects these religious beliefs while also ensuring the economic viability of the dairy industry is a crucial challenge moving forward.
Okay, it's a balancing act for sure, but this leads us to another challenge Dr. Kolkar touches upon: sustainability.
A critical issue for any industry these days, and the dairy sector is no exception.
So in this case, sustainability concerns revolve around what? Animal welfare,
Animal welfare, yeah.
the industry's environmental impact,
That's a big one.
and the efficient use of resources.
All of the above.
So how does India measure up in terms of sustainability? Are they doing a good job, or is there a lot of work to be done?
It's kind of a mixed bag.
Okay.
Traditional Indian dairy farming practices often are quite sustainable.
Sure.
Cows are often treated as part of the family,
Right.
and there's a focus on using locally sourced feed and resources.
So that sounds like a pretty eco-friendly approach.
It can be, but as the industry modernizes
Okay.
and scales up,
Great.
new challenges arise.
What kind of challenges?
Well, intensive farming practices, which involve keeping large numbers of animals in confined spaces, can lead to issues with waste management and disease outbreaks.
And what about the environmental impact? We often hear about the carbon footprint of livestock, especially cows.
Yeah, that's a valid concern.
So how are they dealing with that?
Well, cattle produce methane, a potent greenhouse gas,
Of course.
as a byproduct of their digestion.
So is India taking any steps to address these sustainability challenges? It sounds like there's a real need to balance the economic benefits of dairying with environmental responsibility.
They are. Dr. Kolkar highlights some promising initiatives.
Okay, good.
There's a growing focus on promoting organic and free-range dairy farming.
Which is seen as more ethical and environmentally friendly.
Exactly.
That seems very much in line with the traditional Indian approach to dairying, bringing things full circle.
It is. There's also a push to improve animal health and welfare,
Okay.
which benefits the animals and improves milk yields and reduces the environmental impact.
A win-win-win.
Exactly.
It sounds like India is taking some positive steps, but there's always more to be done.
Sure.
It feels like we're at a crossroads with Indian dairying, a point where tradition meets innovation.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation.
So what lessons can other countries learn from India's experience, both the successes and the challenges?
That's a really important question and one we should definitely explore further.
Perfect. This seems like a great place to pause and pick up the conversation in part 2 of our deep dive.
So, we were talking about the lessons that other countries can learn from India's experience with dairy.
Right. Both the successes and the challenges.
Exactly. And I think one of the key takeaways here is the power of the cooperative model.
Yeah, it's clearly played a huge role in India's success.
It's empowered millions of small farmers,
Given them a voice.
giving them a voice exactly and a stake in the industry's growth.
It seems like a model that could be replicated in other parts of the world, particularly in developing countries.
I think so,
Hmm.
but it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Okay, so what are some of the factors that would need to be considered when adapting this model to different contexts?
Well, you have to look at the local conditions,
Yeah,
the existing infrastructure,
right.
the cultural norms surrounding dairy farming. It's not just about copying what India has done, it's about understanding the principles behind their success and adapting them to suit the specific needs of each country.
That makes a lot of sense, but beyond the cooperative model, what other lessons can we draw from India's dairy journey?
Well, I think another key takeaway is the importance of balancing economic growth with sustainability.
Right, we talked about the environmental challenges associated with dairying.
Yes, and India is really grappling with those challenges head on.
It seems like they're making some progress.
They are. There's a growing awareness of the need to adopt more sustainable practices.
Like what kind of practices?
Well, things like promoting organic farming,
Oh,
improving animal welfare,
yeah.
reducing water usage.
It's about finding that sweet spot where you can have a thriving industry without compromising the environment.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance, but it's one that all dairy-producing countries will need to find.
But let's shift gears a bit and talk about the future of Indian dairying.
Okay.
Where do you see this industry headed in the next decade or so?
Well, I think we're going to see continued growth,
Yeah.
driven by rising incomes and a growing demand for dairy products.
But that growth will need to be sustainable,
Absolutely.
both environmentally and economically.
And I think technology is going to play a major role in that.
What kind of technological advancements are we talking about?
Well, things like precision livestock farming, which we talked about earlier.
Using sensors and data to manage herds more efficiently?
Exactly. And, blockchain technology could be used to improve traceability and transparency in the supply chain.
Okay, so it's about using technology to make the industry more efficient and sustainable.
Yes, and also to meet the evolving demands of consumers.
Like what kind of demands?
Well, there's a growing demand for value-added dairy products.
Yogurt, cheese,
Exactly.
products like that.
And there's also a growing awareness of the ethical and environmental implications of dairy farming.
So consumers are becoming more discerning?
They're looking for products that are not only healthy and delicious, but also sustainably and ethically produced.
So Indian dairy companies are going to have to adapt to these changing consumer preferences.
They are, but I think they're well positioned to do so.
Why is that?
Well, India has a long tradition of dairy farming,
Yeah.
a strong cooperative system,
Right.
and a growing tech sector.
So they have the knowledge, the infrastructure, and the innovation to really thrive in this evolving landscape.
I think so, and I think they have a lot to offer the world in terms of their experience and expertise.
This has been such a fascinating conversation, but before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more thing.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the economic and environmental aspects of Indian dairying, but we can't forget the social and cultural significance of this industry.
You're absolutely right. It's deeply intertwined with Indian society and culture.
And Dr. Kolkar emphasizes this point throughout his research.
He does. He talks about the importance of cows in Hinduism,
Yeah.
the role of dairying in rural livelihoods.
It's a reminder that this industry is about more than just milk production.
Exactly. It's about people. It's about tradition.
It's about a way of life.
Exactly. And I think that's something that's often overlooked in discussions about the global dairy industry.
Well, I'm glad we were able to touch on it today. This has been such an enlightening deep dive into Indian dairying.
It has been a pleasure.
And I want to thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure. Always happy to talk about dairy.
But this conversation doesn't end here, right?
No, definitely not.
We want to hear from our listeners.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on Indian dairying?
What questions do you have?
What insights resonated with you?
Share your thoughts online and keep the conversation going.
Because that's what the deep dive is all about.
Exploring complex topics and learning from each other.
Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey. We've been talking about sustainability and, another area where India has a real opportunity to kind of leapfrog ahead is in technology.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. India is a global powerhouse when it comes to IT and software development.
Yeah.
So applying that expertise to the dairy sector could be a real game changer.
For sure.
So how would that look in practice? What kind of, technological advancements could we see in the Indian dairy industry?
Well, imagine precision livestock farming,
Okay.
where you're using sensors and data analysis to optimize, Everything from animal health
Yeah,
to milk production, or think about, blockchain technology, which could improve transparency and traceability
makes sense.
throughout the supply chain.
It's about bringing cutting-edge technology to a traditionally low-tech industry.
Right, exactly.
So what are the potential benefits?
Oh, the potential benefits are huge, both for farmers and consumers.
Yeah.
So for farmers, technology could give them, access to real-time information about their animals, better disease management, increased efficiency.
Yeah, for
For
consumers.
consumers, it could mean higher quality products,
Right.
greater transparency about their origins.
So it's a win-win for everybody.
It could be,
I imagine there are challenges too, right?
of course, implementing these technologies, especially for small-scale farmers.
Can't be easy.
It can be quite difficult. And I think one of the biggest hurdles is cost.
Okay.
Small farmers may not have the resources to invest in these technologies.
So how do we overcome that challenge?
That's where the role of the government and cooperatives becomes absolutely crucial.
Okay.
Providing access to affordable technology, training, and support will be really key to ensuring that these small farmers aren't left behind.
So it's about bridging that digital divide.
Yeah, making sure that everyone can benefit from these advancements.
So beyond technology, what other avenues for growth and innovation do you see in the Indian dairy industry?
Well, one area with huge potential is the export market.
Okay, I know India is self-sufficient in milk production,
They are.
but I hadn't really considered its potential as a major exporter.
Well, that perception is shifting
Okay.
as India's dairy industry becomes more, you know, efficient and technologically advanced.
It's looking to expand globally.
They are.
Okay, so why now? Why is India suddenly poised to become a major player in the global dairy market?
Well, India has some key advantages, that make it really competitive on the global stage.
Like what?
Well, first of all, their cost of production is relatively low.
Yeah.
They have diverse product offering,
Okay.
and there's this growing global demand for organic and sustainably produced dairy products, something that India is well positioned to provide.
Interesting. So we could actually see Indian dairy brands becoming household names around the world.
I think that's definitely a possibility. Of course, there are challenges, meeting international quality standards, navigating trade regulations,
Makes sense.
building robust export networks, but with the right strategies in place.
They have
I think Indian dairy has the potential to really make a big splash internationally.
I love that. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Indian dairying,
Yeah.
it's clear that this industry is at a pivotal point. It's a story of remarkable achievements,
It is.
but also of ongoing adaptation and evolution.
It's a story that offers valuable lessons for the world.
What kind of lessons?
Well, India's success in empowering small farmers through cooperatives,
Yeah.
their commitment to balancing economic growth with sustainability,
Okay.
and their embrace of technological innovation, these are all insights that other countries can learn from as they look to develop their own dairy industries.
I think you've hit on something really important.
Yeah.
This deep dive hasn't just been about understanding Indian dairying. It's been about understanding how we can build a more resilient, equitable, and sustainable food system globally.
I think that's a great way to put it.
And for our listeners out there, the learning doesn't stop here.
Keep digging.
Right? What insights resonated with you? What questions are you left pondering? How do you see the future of dairying unfolding, both in India and around the world? These are the kinds of questions that we want you to keep exploring.
Exactly.
Share your thoughts, engage in conversations, and keep digging deeper because that's what the deep dive is all about.
That's what it's all about.
Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey.